In the bitter winter of 1943, as World War II tore through Europe, a silent resistance burned beneath the snow-covered forests of Ardennes, France. Among the brave was Isabelle Laurent, 22-year-old fighter with the French resistance. Her father had died in the First World War, and Isabelle had inherited his sense of patriotism, not in words, but in fierce action. She wasn't the strongest nor the most decorated, but she was swift, precise, and fearless. Known for her sharp aim and quicker mind, Isabelle became a leader among a small unit of female operatives assigned to sabotage German munitions and deliver encoded messages to Allied forces. During one critical mission, her team infiltrated a German weapons storage site deep in the forest. The operation was going smoothly until disaster struck. An enemy reconnaissance plane spotted movement near the depot. Within minutes, artillery shells rained down. Screams echoed through the trees as Isabelle was thrown from the blast, blood seeping from her back and leg. Separated from her unit, wounded and alone, Isabelle crawled through brush and mud for hours, eventually hiding beneath a fallen tree. The pain was unbearable, but it was not what broke her. It was the silence, the knowing that no one knew where she was, that perhaps no one ever would. In the faint light of dawn, she pulled a crumpled sheet of paper from her pocket and, with trembling hands, began to write, "If this letter reaches the command post, please tell my mother I love her. I do not regret what I have done. If darkness swallows me today, I still hope tomorrow brings light for those who come after. Live for freedom. I love my country. Even if I never return." Clutching the letter tightly, Isabelle closed her eyes beneath the tree, where she drew her final breath in silence, unheard but not unfelt. 3 days later, members of the resistance found her body. The letter, stained with blood and dirt, was still clutched in her hand. 1 year later, on France's National Day of Remembrance, the President of the Republic stood before the Pantheon, with cameras rolling and veterans standing in salute. He read her letter aloud to a hushed nation. She was not our strongest soldier, nor our highest ranking, but her heart was greater than this war. From that moment, Isabelle Laurent became more than a fighter. She became a symbol etched in textbooks, whispered in classrooms, and remembered in silence each year. Her story was not one of victory. It was one of purpose. She never came back, but her name still lives. The path she left behind. Summer 1965. More than 2 decades after the war ended, France had rebuilt. The streets of Paris hummed with the rhythm of a modern world. But within a quiet village near Lyon, history whispered in the wind through the worn stones of a memorial. Étienne Laurent, 21 years old, stood before the monument bearing a single name, Isabelle Laurent, his aunt. A woman he had never met, yet whose story had shaped his life more than anyone else. Her photo, worn and black and white, lived in his mother's drawer alongside the letter, once read by a president. His entire childhood had been filled with fragments. She was brave. She believed in something bigger. She died so we could live freely. Now a young man of conviction, Étienne had chosen to follow in her footsteps. Not in war, but in purpose. That summer, civil unrest and protests shook parts of France and neighboring countries. Voices rose against inequality, against the remnants of old systems that silenced the weak. Étienne, moved by his aunt's final words, began writing and speaking in support of those without a voice. Immigrants, factory workers, students. Where Isabelle had held a rifle, he held a microphone. But he wasn't just a speaker. He also became a quiet force in uncovering stories of resistance fighters who, like Isabelle, had vanished without glory. He visited archives, tracked down survivors, interviewed elderly villagers who remembered the days when French daughters disappeared into forests and never returned. One rainy afternoon, while helping clean a dusty storeroom at a rural war museum in Verdun, Étienne uncovered a metal box buried beneath crates of unused uniforms. Inside it was a journal, cracked and faded. His breath caught when he saw the first page. Property of Isabelle Laurent, Lyon, 1942. The journal was filled with raw entries. Fear, hope, rage, the longing for peace. And written just weeks before her final mission. If I die, let them remember not the war, but the reason I stood up. Étienne wept, not just for the aunt he never knew, but for the thousands who had vanished into the same shadows. He knew then what he had to do. In 1967, Étienne published a book, The Fire in Her Footsteps. Women of the French Resistance. It became a national bestseller. School children across France now read Isabelle's letter not just as a wartime relic, but as a testament to courage. On the 25th anniversary of her death, Étienne stood before the French Assembly and read her words once more, just as the president had decades before. Live for freedom. I love my country. Even if I never return, this time the country was listening. The world had changed, but some stories remained. Claire Laurent, a 19-year-old university student, leaned over her laptop in a quiet Paris cafe. On her screen glowed Étienne Laurent's famous book, The Fire in Her Footsteps, now digitized and studied by students worldwide. Claire, Isabelle's great-niece and Étienne's granddaughter, had grown up hearing fragments of the family story, but today, she was on a mission to bring it to life in a new way. Claire was preparing a documentary, Bloodlines of Resistance. Where Étienne had written books, Claire wanted to speak to the digital world. Video essays, interviews, and short films that would bring Isabelle's courage to a new generation. Her camera was already packed, her train ticket booked. Destination Ardennes, the forest that had cradled and claimed Isabelle's final moments. When Claire arrived at the memorial site, it was dusk. The crumbling wall Étienne once touched still stood. She set up her camera, her hands trembling not from cold, but from emotion. She spoke softly into the lens. My name is Claire Laurent. I never knew Isabelle or Étienne, but their choices shaped my life. Isabelle fought for freedom. Étienne fought for memory. And today I stand here to remind us, stories are bridges between generations, between past and future. As night fell, Claire knelt by the old brick, placing a small bouquet of wildflowers and a folded letter she had written herself. Dear Isabelle, your story didn't end in the forest. It lives here in all of us. Thank you. Back home in Paris, Claire's documentary quickly spread across social media, touching hearts around the world. Teenagers stitched clips with their own stories of courage. Veterans shared messages of gratitude. Historians offered praise. For the first time, Isabelle's name trended worldwide, not as a relic, but as a living, breathing inspiration. Final scene. On the anniversary of Isabelle's passing, Claire stands on stage at a global youth conference, sharing her family's story. Behind her, a screen glows with Isabelle's handwriting. Live for freedom. I love my country, even if I never return. As the audience rises in applause, Claire smiles through tears, knowing the path Isabelle left behind would never fade.